Hello and welcome to the latest spotlight of NuclearCraft version 0.0.1.5. In this version there's lots of new stuff. It was a bigger update than I thought it was going to be. As you can see, there's a load of stuff in my inventory that I've got prepared to show you. This update adds loads of stuff to all the normal machines, adds new fission fuels, oxide fuels, and adds a load of new gimmicks to the fusion reactor, such as actual outputs you can see down here. So just generally loads of stuff. And we're going to get through them quickly because there is actually quite a lot of stuff. The changelog is quite long. So we're going to start right from the top with the fusion reactors. So the fusion reactors, they now produce outputs. So the outputs have now been added to the game. As you can see here, I've got a tritium-deuterium reaction going on. Now the products of the reaction depend on what you're actually reacting together. As I may have explained in the last update, for example, tritium and deuterium produces helium-4 and neutrons, and the way you can work that out is because tritium has 1 proton, so does deuterium, and tritium has 2 neutrons and deuterium has 1 neutron. So overall you have 2 protons and 3 neutrons. Helium-4 has 2 neutrons and 2 protons, so you're left over with a neutron, and so therefore you've worked out that it produces helium-4 and neutrons, which are being collected down here. Neutron capsules have been added, and there's the helium-4 building up as well. So for the larger reactants like lithium and boron, even things like helium-3, basically the more advanced fusion, the less obvious ones, it's quite easy to just sort of work out what you'll get. You'll basically get a load of helium-4 with whatever's left over with the remainder protons and neutrons that you have knocking about. So for example, if you're going to produce say 11 neutrons and 11 protons, I don't know if that is actually possible, but you're probably going to produce 5 helium per mixture of fuel per each cell. So if you have one cell of something and another cell of something, and overall the reactants have 11 protons and 11 neutrons, you're probably going to produce 5 helium cells and possibly a deuterium cell or a neutron and a proton cell. So you can't actually get protons there, it's just hydrogen cells. So you're probably going to produce deuterium, neutrons and hydrogen. So roughly you can work out like that. The more simple reactions like deuterium and tritium, deuterium and deuterium, hydrogen and hydrogen's an easy one to work out, but that's a little bit more difficult to work out because some protons can change into neutrons and vice versa. So for example, the deuterium reaction actually has about 4 different products because some neutrons can change into protons, things like that. Possibly in the description or on the wiki, I'll just have a huge list of all the different nuclear reactions. Some of them are basically what they are in real life, but some of them I can't find on the internet, and I can't really I don't think they're very, well, obviously not very useful reactions in real life, like lithium-7 and lithium-7 in real life wouldn't be a reaction that we'd ever try. But basically that's the products for that I've basically just tried to work out through common sense. So just produce a load of helium and then some neutrons with what's left over. So yeah, as I say, they'll either be in a list in the description below or they'll be on the wiki at some point, so you can look out for that. What else? Oh yeah, so I've added sensible shift clicking. That's actually applied to all the different machines, but basically shift clicking used to be a bit annoying in the fusion reactor, because what used to happen is that if you had, say, tritium and deuterium, so I've got tritium fuel in here in the first slot and deuterium in the second, what used to happen is that if I, say, had some deuterium, if I shift click, it used to go into this slot, and then it would clog up this slot and no more tritium would be able to go in because that slot would be sort of blocked by the deuterium. But now, as you're about to see, deuterium gets properly shift-clicked into the correct slot, it gets correctly shift-clicked into there, and tritium, as per usual, just gets shift-clicked into the right spot here, so you can see that the fuel's going to the right slots now. If you have a fuel like helium-3 or hydrogen or whatever that isn't actually part of the reaction, it just won't shift-click anywhere, it will just go into your inventory. So that's nice. I think that's useful for those who want to shift-click in a bit quicker, a bit more easily. The same is true for automation as well. So if, say, I have a bunch of deuterium and have a bunch of tritium, and I put them in and they get pumped in by any type of pipe, BuildCraft or thermodynamics or whatever. So this is the deuterium, I think, and the deuterium is going to go inside and it's going to get correctly put into this secondary slot, and the tritium is going to be correctly put into this slot here. If you have the wrong type of fuel, like helium-3, let's see what happens to that, then it will get clogged up. Or possibly it will just fall out. I haven't actually tested this yet. Either it will just fall out of the pipe. Yes, it just falls out of the pipe. It gets absolutely flung somewhere or other because it has no space in this reactor because it's not accepting helium-3. It's only accepting tritium and deuterium. So be careful with that. If you have a sort of more system based on just overloading the reactor with different types of reactants, now it only accepts the fuels that it is actually using, similar to the shift-click method. Products, as you can see, of the reaction are down here. This little bar down here indicates how close you are to producing another cell of that product. This slot is hydrogen, this is deuterium, helium-3, hydrogen, deuterium, tritium, helium-3, and helium-4. So you see the helium-4 is about to tick over. It's nearly reached a full cell of helium-4, and then you can see that gets pulled out by this mechanism pipe, and it just gets put into this chest. If you want to collect neutrons, you have to make yourself some empty capsules. The recipe for those is reinforced plating and some basic plating, and you get 4 of those. That's what you need to store your neutrons in. So if you have none of them, then the neutrons will just build up and build up. There is a maximum amount of a type of gas or fluid that you can actually store in this little internal area down here. It's the same amount in liters in fuel. So it's about 50 capsules worth of neutrons can be stored before you start basically losing them. And as soon as you put neutrons in, the capsules in, it will store all the neutrons in the capsules and go into this slot, which can then be exported into a pipe. Now there is one known, it's not really a bug, but it's one sort of issue for some reason that I cannot work out. If you're using BuildCraft pipes to export, I don't know if it might happen with other pipes, but it definitely doesn't happen with the mechanism or Ender.io or thermal dynamics, but for some reason BuildCraft pipes, you cannot export from any of the chunks except for the bottom one. I don't know why that is. You can still use BuildCraft pipes to import into any of the chunks, but for some reason BuildCraft pipes will only export from this bottom chunk. I don't understand why, but that's it. It's not a big problem. You just need to move your pipe, and there's loads of different sides to do that, so it's not really a huge issue, but just keep that in mind if for some reason it's not working and you're using BuildCraft pipes. As I say, all the different types of pipe work otherwise. So here we go. We've got about neutrons about to tick over here. So here we go. We have 26 empty capsules, and soon enough, when this gets to full, and this will also get to full, so this bar is now fully white and it's very, very close to outputting some neutrons. This should tick down to 25. There we go, and you can see that the neutrons are traveling down the pipe. So pretty simple really. Automation has been is a lot easier now, and the outputs are working nicely, which is good. So that's pretty much the fusion reactor. Other things, change some of the variables like the heat production variables and the power production variables, and the heat variables for the different fuels and fuel usage variables. Some of them have changed, but most of them have stayed the same. Okay, so that's pretty much the fusion reactor. It's in a stable state now. It's in a state which I would call done, but it may be changed in the future. But for now, I probably won't muck around with it too much more. It's pretty much done, I'd say, and it's working nicely, which is good. It's working the way that I wanted it to. So we'll probably leave that for now. So hopefully you guys, if you do have any crashes with it, then do tell me, and I'll get around to fixing it. We had a lot of crashes in the last update, and most of those, I think all of them pretty much have been fixed. But if there are any new bugs, then do of course tell me, and I'll try and fix them. Okay, so the next thing is the addition of the Oxidizer. So we're moving from fusion to fission now. New addition to fission reactions, because I've neglected that for a little bit. There's new fission stuff. There's a new machine called the Oxidizer, and the recipe for the Oxidizer is, as we'll see here, Oxidizer uses basic plating, universal reactant, and some advanced plating, which we'll get to in a minute, and that creates an oxidizer. Also the recipe for the fusion reactor has changed as well to need those advanced platings. I'll show you the recipe for that in a minute. So what you need to do for the oxidizer is basically take some of your oxygen that you've been collecting from your electrolyzer. So remember, you need 64 water or empty cells that goes to your hydrogen isotopes and some oxygen, and you this is where you use your oxygen. So there's loads of different recipes. You can oxidize already created cells, you can oxidize already made fuels, but you can also oxidize the small lumps or the normal size lumps, and depending on sort of the size or the type of item you're trying to oxidize, it requires different amounts of oxygen to produce. So let's just do some examples. So for example, if I have some HEU235 fuel here, you'll see that it turns into HEU235 oxide fuel and uses up 32 oxygen. You can also oxidize just the pure uranium ingots. That uses 12, and you get a uranium oxide ingot, which you can then isotope separate into the oxide 235 and oxide 238. Same with the lumps, you need 4 for those, so I've got plutonium 241 oxide. And finally, the small lumps, you need just 1 oxygen cell. So there we go, I've got a little small lump of plutonium 239 oxide. So pretty simple, works pretty intuitively. Shift clicking works nicely as well. If you have oxygen cells, it will shift click into that correct oxygen slot, which is nice. Same with the automation as I'm about to show you. So basically the oxide fuels are just more heat efficient, less heat efficient actually. They do produce more heat, but they also produce more energy. So let's just have a comparison between HU235 and HU235 oxide. So you see here, 235 oxide produces a base of 680 RF per tick. They've got the same lifetime, the oxide fuels, and a base heat of 280 heat per tick, a total energy of 32,000 kilo redstone flux. So 680, 280, 326. And you can see here that this produces a base power of 1010, so that's 50% more, but you can also see that it produces, I think it's about 25% or maybe 20% more heat, so that's 336 heat per tick base, but it definitely produces more energy overall. So you may have to adjust some of your fission reactor setups, more coolant inside the reactors to deal with this extra heat, but otherwise no reason not to go ahead and oxidize all your fuels. And you can see here it just works as normal, and for some reason there's that little bug where it says no fuel until you reopen the GUI. You can see you've got HEU ox, which is nice, and which are producing, because it's a 3x3x3, we're producing 2020 RF per tick, and I've got the thing full of coolant, so it's not going to produce any heat. So that's good. That's pretty much how those work. The oxide fuels, you can play around with those. The oxide HEP241 fuel is incredibly powerful. Let's have a look at that. HEP241 oxide. That produces a base of 2030 RF per tick, so that is crazy. That is probably the most powerful fuel in the game. If you have a 17 by 17 by 17 reactor, then you're going to need a lot of coolant, but it's going to create a huge amount of power. So if you're really into creating that amount of power, then this is definitely the fuel for you. It's very powerful indeed. So do use that. Use all the oxide fuels because they are basically better. There's no thorium oxide fuels because, well, there just isn't. And the MOX fuel recipes have also changed a bit. MOX fuel now requires the oxide plutonium to be able to create. For the non-fissile uranium or plutonium, then don't worry, you don't have to oxide that, but it will use either the oxide or the non-oxide version. So yeah, that's fine. You can just use either of those. It doesn't matter if it's oxide or not. You can use any mixture of them in the recipe. Okay, so next we have the fact that all machines and generators can now import and export items on all sides. Now that basically means that you can import inputs into any side, even the bottom or the side, and you can export from the top and the side. You can basically run the entire, if you have Ender.io for example, where you can actually import and export with one pipe, you can basically just run the block, run the automation from just one side of the block. So basically you can just use any side you want. The import doesn't have to come in from the top or the side, and the export doesn't have to come out of the bottom. Every side works. So that just makes it easier. One exception to this, I was actually about to just test this. It turns out this isn't working. One exception to this is that the reaction generator, I basically haven't been thinking about the reaction generator that much. So there's actually two problems with that, with the reaction generator. First of all, it doesn't actually use, it can't use any of the oxide fuels because I basically just forgot to add them to the reaction generator recipe list. But also universal reactant, when piped in, is meant to go into this slot, but actually goes into that one. But that should be fixed in the next version, but for now that is a bit broken. So this is the only one that I can think of that is broken in terms of the automation not working properly. But otherwise it just generates power in the same way. It just works in the way that you expect it to. It just uses up stuff in the same way as it used to. So there we go, there's the reaction generator, but this is a better example, the oxidizer. I remember I was talking about this. So oxygen cells will automatically get outputted into the oxygen slot properly. It won't be put into this one, and the uranium-235 will be correctly inserted into here, and then it will be taken out of this side because this is an export. I could also export from this side, but this is obviously not an export pipe, this is an import pipe. And then it just gets exported from that side as well. So it just makes automation easier, more flexible. So there we go, there's all the exports there, the products. If we have something like a metal furnace where you also have a fuel slot and also another import and one export, so that's an example. Metal furnace is one of them, nuclear furnace is another, and the crusher. It's quite annoying when you have big reactors installed because coal gets automatically put into this slot up here, but I've changed that because normally people want to automate coal being put into this bottom slot. So whenever you import a burnable item like coal or wooden planks, that will get inserted by the pipe into the bottom slot, and all of the stuff that gets cooked will actually go correctly into the top slot. So that will go into there, and you can see that it starts cooking, and that will get, oh, this is the wrong way, I need a wrench. So if we just flip this the right way around, this should now be exporting the iron ingots. There we go. That's working correctly. So yeah, you can just make automation a bit easier. What else? Imported items will be handled sensibly, as we've just shown there, except for this, as I said, this isn't working at the moment, that will work next version. The exceptions to this are upgrades. If you try to pipe in upgrades, they'll just go into these slots. You can't pipe items into these upgrade slots here. You have to put those in manually, and they also won't get exported as well. So that's those. The upgrade slots are the manual slots. You can't automate those. So those are the exceptions to the rule. Okay, what else have we got? We've added capsules. The capsule item that I showed you earlier. The recipe for that is here. And the way you craft nuclear workspace. The way you craft, for example, RTG cells now is, instead of that recipe before, you basically just put plutonium-238 next to an RTG capsule, and you just get next to an empty capsule, and you get an RTG capsule, and that just works in the same way as before. You just use that to create your RTG generator. So there we go. That's pretty simple. And obviously the empty capsules can be used to store neutrons, as you saw in here. So the empty capsules will have other uses, as you can see down here. They'll have uses to store protons and electrons as well. So it's going to be used to store some of the simple sort of subatomic materials and possibly some more radioactive materials. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the future with those. What else we got? We've got depleted uranium plating. This is a bit of a big addition. The recipe for this is uranium-238 or uranium oxide 238 with reinforced plating, and you get 16 of those. And depleted uranium plating can be used to create armor. It can be used to create tools, including a spaxilo. Let's just see the recipe for the spaxilo. You can see here the same as the tough alloy one. It's got a durability of 25,000. The tough alloy tools have been halved in durability to make room for the new tier of tools. They do the same attack damage though, but the durability is just increased by 250%. So there we go, depleted uranium plating. You can make depleted uranium tools and armor and things like that. I've also added boron tools as a tier between iron and diamond, and the recipe for that is just the standard tool recipes and standard armor recipes, blah blah blah. There's no spaxilo for that. There's only spaxilos for the DU and tough alloy materials. We've also added advanced plating. We saw that before in the recipe. The recipe for that is 8 of them, from 4 reinforced plating, 8 boron-10, and 4 universal reactant. That's used in the creation of the oxidizer and the fusion reactor now. So the fusion reactor is more expensive now. What else have we got? We've added small lumps of lithium-6 and boron-10. There's been a lot of recipe changes, especially in the isotope separator. One of the bigger ones, more of the more important ones, is that crushed lithium now goes to 1 lithium-7 and 1 small lump of lithium-6. That then gets turned to lithium-6 in the usual way, and crushed boron goes to boron-11 and 3 small lumps of boron-10. And then you just need 9 of those to make a boron-10. So there we go, that's that. What else is there added? There's lots of recipe changes, as I said, especially in the isotope separator. Instead of getting 3, so for example with, where is it? Let's just find the standard uranium dust. So uranium dust now goes to 2 uranium-238 and 2 small lumps of uranium-235 instead of 3 each. That's just to balance out the fact that, first of all, the oxide fuels have come in, and also to balance out the fact that the rate of ore spawns for all the different ores have increased. So all the different ores will spawn more commonly in the ground now, including the plutonium in the nether. So those are just more common. What else is there? So yeah, increased ore generation rates. There's a new nuke sound effect. Let's go and see that. I think this was actually added in 0.0.1.4, but I forgot to put it in the changelog, but I haven't actually showed this off yet, so if we just go miles away. Let's go over here. This looks like a nice mountain to decimate. There is a bit of a chunk error though. Hopefully this will load. If not, then we're going to have to... Oh, there we go, it's loaded. It's a bit glitchy. Don't know why this happens in Minecraft, it should be fixed by now. Let's put this here, and you'll hear the new sound effect. There we go. Bit of a warning to run away. You can hear it from quite far off. There it is, and it blows up in the usual way, the huge blast radius like a normal nuke. I might add radiation to it at some point, but I haven't quite worked that out yet. For now it's just a huge explosion. The grenade doesn't make the sound when you throw it. So it goes for 30 seconds, and then when you hear it stop, you know that it's goodbye mountain. And a big explosion, and the mountain's gone. So that the nuke works pretty similarly otherwise, it just blows up mountains. It's just that sound effect is just more of an indication that you probably want to start running. So it's nice. What else happens? Lots of bug fixes related to the fusion reactor. Yeah, there used to be a bug where if you place the fusion reactor next to cable and below another fusion reactor, then you'd crash, and sometimes when you added to the size of the fusion reactor it would crash, and there's loads of different types of crash that you could get with the fusion reactor. Hopefully all of those have been fixed now. As far as I know, as far as my testing has gone, all those crashes have been fixed. What else is there? Decreased durability of tough alloy armor and tools, yes, I've already explained that, and again possible other things that I may have forgotten. So that's pretty much everything I have to show you. It's a bit of a long update, but lots of cool additions to both fusion and fission, and also automation and a few other places. So I hope you've enjoyed. If you have any bugs, as I said, do report them. And if you have any suggestions, any comments, do post them in the forums or in the comments below or wherever. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'll see you next time. Goodbye.